This work session of the Board of Trustees of the Spring Independent School District is officially called to order on Thursday, April 9th, 2020. On March 16th, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meeting laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to COVID-19 coronavirus. Accordingly, due to health and safety concerns, as well as the stay-at-home order issued by the county judge of Harris County, this meeting is being conducted by teleconference. The time is now 6:05 p.m. Board trustees present: Winfred Adams Jr., Kelly P. Hodges, Deborah Jensen, Jana Gonzalez, Dawn Davis, and myself, Rhonda Newhouse.
I don't even know how to interject here. Trustee Durant is on the call. She said she can hear us. We can't hear her, and her lights are out. And so, but she is on the call.
Thank you, Trustee Kelly. So we will include Justine Durant on our minutes for the work session. And since we're having this bad storm and any of us could lose electricity at any time, if you go out, please just call back in or just go out and come back in again by your phone or iPad. And if by chance I go out, I have asked Jana if she will continue the meeting for me until I can get back in. So we hope we have some backup and we will have a successful meeting. I'd like to ask everyone to mute their microphones unless you are speaking. Thank you. The next order of business is a review of the minutes from previous meetings. Does any trustee have any changes or corrections to the minutes of the March 5th, 2020 board work session or the March 17th, 2020 regular session or the March 27th, 2020 special call session? Hearing none, these items will be submitted as a part of the consent agenda at the April 14th, 2020 Board of Trustees regular meeting. We will now hear from our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Rodney Watson.
Thank you, President Newhouse and other trustees. Thank you all so much for being here this evening on our video board meeting. As you know, we've been extremely busy over the past several weeks, and so I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief this evening and save the majority of them for Tuesday. The two things I want to highlight is, to date, since we've started serving meals, we've served over 85,000 meals total for all of our students for the past 3 to 4 weeks. So we're really excited about being able to support our communities, but more importantly, we thank our child nutrition staff for being out on the front lines every day, making sure that our students are eating. In addition, you might have seen information going out regarding our technology. We've given out technology to our 9th through 12th graders, and as of this afternoon, we had deployed 3,351 Chromebooks to our students. And so we'll continue collecting those numbers from the afternoon group, freshmen today, and then next week we will start delivering Chromebooks for our middle school students. And so on Tuesday, we'll be able to give you an update on that. So we do thank our principals and our school teams who made it out to their buildings to ensure our 9th through 12th graders had Chromebooks. Other than that, we're continuing to move forward with Empowered Learning 2.0, and I'll give you a more detailed update on Tuesday. Thank you all very much.
If I may interject real quick, I believe I see Ms. Durant on the attendee list, and I'm going to try to promote her to panelist real quick. And it looks like it will not let me promote a telephone number, so I apologize for the interruption. We'll continue to try to get her in on the panelist side.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Ms. Durant, if you have any questions or comments to make, I understand we may not be able to hear you, but feel free to text one of us, send us a text, and we will ask your question for you. Our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of Staff, Julie Hill.
Good evening, Madam President, trustees, and Dr. Watson. Thank you for joining us this evening. If you're following along in your packet, I have 4 items, and I'm going to begin on page 18 with a second reading of BED local board meetings, public participation. This is a second reading of this particular policy, and it puts in print our practices here in Spring ISD related to public participation in our board meetings. If there are no questions, let us move to page 22 to the second reading of FL local student records. The major change with this policy can be found on page 27 in regards to the release of directory information to third parties. This is the language that was recommended by our board governance committee.
Dr. Hill, I'm not sure whether Ms. Durant can see this, so I was just going to read the items in blue for her. And it says, Ms. Durant, the district shall not release any directory information to third-party requesters unless required by law and with parent permission. Thank you, Dr. Hill.
Thank you, President. And if there are no questions, then we would definitely ask that those 2 items be placed on the consent agenda for Tuesday night. I'd like to at this time move to the 3rd item, which can be found on page 28, the Spring ISD Instructional Continuity Plan. If you could join me there on page 28. I'm going to, for the sake of clarity, simply share what's in the explanation of the item and then give some greater detail and explanation. COVID-19 led to the closure of all schools in the state of Texas, and it became necessary for districts to launch at-home schools that maximize the amount of instructional time for students this year and support student mastery of instructional time of grade level standards. And to this goal, the Texas Education Agency provided all districts with a framework called the Instructional Continuity Plan. Spring ISD used this framework and resources provided by TEA to develop a customized instructional continuity plan that meets the needs of its students. I'm going to, at this time, get some assistance from either Jeremy or Jason. I have one slide I want to project for you, and I'm going to speak from that particular slide. We good? Thank you, Jeremy. So the instructional continuity framework has 4 phases, actually 5, which begins with phase 0, project management. Work began here in Spring ISD before TA provided the framework. Our superintendent, Dr. Watson, described the vision, and then our administration team filled in all the details. We identified responsible persons, work groups, and a strategic decision-making process to build our remote instructional model. Phase 1 was conduct a landscape analysis. So through surveys and conversations, We assess the internet and the technology device access of both our teachers and our students. We also evaluated high-tech and low-tech capabilities to deliver instruction. We next moved into phase 2, determine the at-home instructional model. We used all of the data that we gathered from our material, human, and financial resources to then develop the Spring ISD Remote Instructional Plan, Empowered Learning at Home 2.0. Now, it's 2.0 because our first version of remote learning really involved parent resources with recommendations for activities that they could do at home with their students. But 2.0 is different. We are now providing instruction remotely with student expectations and assignments that are graded by their teachers. We are already currently in that phase. As we move to phase 3, operationalize the at-home model. We began our implementation this past Monday with our seniors, and we will begin instruction this upcoming Monday on April 13th with the remaining grades pre-K through 11. During this phase, we have begun implementation in the areas of student and teacher schedules, staff expectations, administrator and teacher professional development, and resource distribution throughout the district to ensure that we have all undergirded by our consistent, clear, ongoing, effective communications to all stakeholders by our communications team. We are entering phase 4, moving from phase 3 into phase 4, which is monitor, support, and continuously improve the instructional model. This is where we really are now. As we begin implementing the model, we are supporting our students, parents and teachers, administrators and principals, as well as adjusting and adapting the model to continuously improve instruction for all of our students. This is our overview of the Spring ISD Instructional Continuity Framework. Are there any questions? Thank you, Jeremy. You can pull it down. Well, that means I was crystal clear. That's good. Okay, well, having no questions, then let me move to my final item for this evening. My final item of the evening is found on page 29. It's the second comprehensive resolution regarding district procedures due to COVID-19. And that begins on page 29. The resolution which you had before you and you received with an opportunity to read is very lengthy. So let me just hit the high points of what we do in this resolution. So in short, we continue the compensation of all employees as resolved in the board resolution that was previously passed by our trustees on March 17th, 2020. This resolution ends additional pay for non-exempt employees, except as determined by the superintendent, and I'll provide a few additional details in just a moment. Further, this resolution authorizes the superintendent to take the following actions: to continue to provide services to students, to continue to have our employees work modified schedules remotely and in person or a combination of thereof, to ensure that all of our employees are compensated, to provide additional compensation for non-exempt employees, including police officers as needed, for us to continue to provide remote instruction to students, for the superintendent to modify grading practices for remote instructional practices as needed, for the superintendent to determine whether to resume normal operations or to continue the district's closure. In addition, this resolution ratifies the superintendent's request to the Texas Education Agency to waive the district's current teacher appraisal requirements and to establish an evaluation process that will be aligned to remote instruction. In keeping with that, it waives the appraisal policies and the corresponding timelines with them for this time. The board also, through this resolution, resolves that our remote instructional day is a day of instruction, and that we will continue with the last day of school that we've identified for teachers and for students. So those are the highlights of the resolution that we bring to you, and we would ask that you would, in fact, approve and sign so that we continue to operate the district during this time of closure of our physical facilities, but not closure of the district's business. Are there any questions?
So, Dr. Hill, are you talking about approving this on next Tuesday?
I'll be great if we approved it next Tuesday. General Counsel, do we need an urgency before then? I think the current resolution that's in place will carry us through until then.
I think the plan was to do it next Tuesday unless anybody else.
I just would like more time to look it over, so.
Will through next Tuesday be enough time for you, Winford?
For me, it will. I don't know about anybody else, but
Okay.
that ought to be enough time for me.
And we will be back with this on next Tuesday.
Well, thank you, President Newhouse. That then concludes my presentations for the evening and all of the items that I have. Thank you so much, trustees.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. We appreciate your work here. For our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of School Leadership and Student Support Services, Dr. Lupita Hinojosa.
Thank you, President Newhouse, members of the board, superintendent, and cabinet. I will be on page 35. And what we'd like to do, what the administration would like to do now, is to give you an update on the class of 2020. And so I do have a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that I'd like to share with you. All right, and I believe that it is up. Yes, I see Jeremy nodding, so that's good. So this is the PowerPoint that I'd like to share with you. It's a very short presentation, but at the same time, I'd like to be able to give you an update of the work that's been going on. And, you know, from the minute that we got back right after spring break, our superintendent shared with us, you know, our priority has to be our seniors, and it means all hands on deck. We want our class of 2020 to finish strong and make it to the finish line. And so what we immediately did was we formed a committee, and we called it Class of 2020 Committee. We have over 45 members that have participated in this committee. And we broke into 5 different committees. I'll tell you, this committee is made up of principals, counselors, high school counselors, high school college readiness counselors, central office staff. We've got parents on our committee. We've got our senior sponsors are on the committee. And then of course, we've involved our students. And so the Class of 2020 Committee broke into 5 specific areas that we quickly identified that needed to be addressed. Just really quickly, I am going to go into some of these sections a little bit deeper, but just to give you a quick overview, we have a committee that looked at instruction and intervention. Our curriculum department worked solely on the instructional piece. This committee looked at interventions that we needed to quickly make sure they were in place to ensure that all of our students graduated on time. looking at grade repair, credit recovery, our IGC committee for students that maybe still are missing EOCs, and then technology. And you heard our superintendent talk about the work that our high school principals have done, started last week and finished up this week. Another committee focused on the college and career readiness. And you can see right across the board, very, very urgent activities that our seniors must continue to be engaged this spring semester. And we will be talking about our AP exams in our presentation. The next committee looked at grade reporting and extremely urgent. You can see from the list of topics that the committee has been working on, topics that are crucial to our seniors to make sure that they graduate on time. And I will be diving in a little bit deeper into this committee. The next one is our senior events. Senior events, as you know, are the spring semester for our seniors. That is their semester. So you can see I will also be diving a little bit deeper into these topics, which include our prom, our senior trips, graduation, and of course, refunds of events that have had to be canceled due to the school closure. And the last piece is the policy. And we will later on in our meeting, we will be addressing policy, more specifically looking at EIA local to address our GPA and class ranks and our AP testing. So that's an overview of the work that our class of 2020 committee is working on and will continue to work through to ensure our seniors are on track to graduate. And as I shared with you, our very first piece was looking at our instructional program. We needed to ensure that all students continue the courses that they've been engaged in and they're able to finish. And I know you've seen our website for our students, the Empowered Learning at Home. And we launched that. Our communications department was instrumental working around the clock to get this launched immediately. And now we've moved into 2.0 because we've actually now begun the instructing. We're closed, but we are in the instructing phase. And so the top of mind was making sure that our seniors, met all course requirements. And so our curriculum department worked on a instructional delivery model, which is a project-based learning model that allows our students to participate in an interdisciplinary approach, meaning that concepts and skills and the standards that are from multiple different courses are integrated into this module. And this allows this project-based learning modules that specifically our seniors are involved in. They're 3-week modules, and there's 3 of them, and it allows for students to independently work through their modules. There's a lot of autonomy, but most importantly, our teachers are also able to facilitate their learning and facilitate the work. And so you'll see that up here, we are using Schoology as our platform. All of the modules are uploaded into Schoology. The work that the students have to look at, the materials they have to read and understand are in Schoology and or different resources that are already linked in Schoology. And then of course, our teachers are able to communicate with the students through this platform as well as grade the work. And one of the most important pieces that we looked at was to ensure that this instructional delivery model that we have created also met the needs of our students with disabilities. So we've been able to partner and ensure that these lessons, these modules are able to ensure the accommodations, the modifications for our students with special needs, as well as our students that are in the AP courses, and they can also be challenged. The second piece is what you see down here, and you're also familiar with this program. It's called Edgenuity. The second part of this committee looked and wanted to ensure that our students that were missing any credits or maybe had failed an EOC, that there was an opportunity for us to also allow them to recover their credits during this period of time and ensure that they get back on track. And what our team has actually been able to do was to modify the courses on Edgenuity. Edgenuity is a very robust system, but it also needs to be tailored to the student. And that's what the team has done, tailored the lessons to make sure that once again, we keep that 3-week module and that the students are only having to recover and participate in lessons that they may have missed. And the other piece is our students that are failing, that have failed the EOCs. Remember, there's 5 EOCs. In the past, they were only able to use an alternate way to recover the EOCs if they had only missed 2. Under the COVID-19 closure, the state has removed that limit. So we've got new students coming into the system and having the opportunity to complete these modules and earn a passing standard to be able to graduate. So on this side, you'll see that in green, the instruction that the students are receiving, if you are on track, you just work on what we call our project-based learning modules. For students that may need additional work in order for them to graduate, they keep working on the project-based learning modules, but then they're able to engage in any credit repair. Maybe they were failing 4th 6 weeks, or they can get in and do some credit recovery as well as earning their EOC credit. And the big piece of this is the key to ensure that our seniors are successful is the frequent check-in by our Spring ISD teachers, counselors, all staff. And what we have said is all hands are on deck. So our principals have identified all the seniors, identified what pieces are missing, and assigned staff to make sure that we track them along the way and that they have every opportunity to be successful. The next committee that you saw, and one that we will be asking for in a resolution, is the grade reporting. That it became, extremely critical because at the end of the 5th 6 weeks, our policy EIA local says that currently we freeze our class rank and GPA calculations at the end of the 5th 6 weeks. And we will be proposing a resolution as our next item that we actually indeed freeze our class rank at the end of the fall semester, meaning the report card that our students received in January. And this is a practice that many districts around Region 4 used to implement. And we will be asking you for a resolution shortly. The next piece that we looked at was, okay, our grading and how will we grade and ensure that our students achieve mastery of the courses, the curriculum and the courses that they are currently taking, and at the same time that we ensure that we are able to calculate semester grades. And so, as I shared earlier, the 4th 6 weeks, we were able to finish that, and actually report cards came out right before we went on spring break. And so they were issued and they will be used as part of the semester calculations. We are towards the end of the 5th 6 weeks. And so what we are, what the committee has recommended is that we indeed instead combine or eliminate our 5th grading cycle, and that we are able to launch with our Empower 2.0 At Home 2.0, that we would launch that learning opportunity, and that students will be receiving grades for the project-based learning assignments that they're doing. And so the students would receive grades for the 6th grading cycle. And so for the semester grade, instead of it being a weighted average, the district will actually take the 4th 6 weeks period final grade and the 6th 6 weeks final grade for a final semester, spring semester grade. Both the 4th 6 weeks and the 6th 6 weeks, they will each count as 50%. And thus we would be able to show and document that the students met mastery for the courses they are enrolled in this spring semester. The next piece that we, the administration, based on the work that our committee did, that we are recommending is that we indeed use numerical grades. And we want to use the numerical grades and not use a pass-fail or a met standard or not met standard, so that we can ensure that our students are poised. Any of them that are part of the NCAA or any athletes that are moving into higher education, to colleges and to universities, currently they do not take the pass-fail. They're also discussing the met standard or not met standard. We've received guidance from NCAA that they are working with institutions of higher education, and that there may be flexibility in students being able to receive a pass-fail and them not being hurt. However, it's going to be very difficult to average a pass-fail for any year-long courses. If you have a numerical grade in the fall semester and then you just have a pass-fail in the spring semester, in order to get that year-in average for a year-long course, it would be very difficult. And so the committee has recommended, the administration is recommending that we stay with the numerical grades, and our curriculum department has already worked into our project-based learning modules the opportunity for teachers to give grades. And then the last piece is also a part of our proposal that we allow for students to maintain their GPA for AP courses regardless if the student takes the College Board exam. This is also part of our EIA local, and the policy actually states that the students not get their weighted GPA. And so we are recommending that for this year only, that the students, and we as the administration and our school administrators are definitely encouraging and working with our students to prepare them for the AP exam. College Board recognizes the situation that our students are in. They have adjusted the AP exam. It will be much shorter, a 45-minute exam. It will be free response, and the students will be able to take it from home. And so we are working, our teachers are working with our students to make sure that they're prepared for this AP exam. However, in our resolution and our proposal is that for this year only, that if the students are unable to take the exam, that we maintain their GPA regardless. And then the last piece of the work of this committee that I want to bring forth is the committee that we call the Events Committee. And that Events Committee is a committee that's been looking at several events that our seniors are involved in. This committee is made up of actually Ms. Melendez, our principal at Spring High School, leads this committee. We have our assistant superintendent of high schools. We have central office folks, but most importantly, we have parents in the committee from our PTO and our booster clubs. We have students on this committee that are either the class president or are in student council. And we also have our senior advisors. And so they met a couple of times, and they brought forth their recommendation last week when we launched our Class of 2020 Finish Strong web page. We actually also launched a survey. We wanted to make sure that not only the participants in this committee had input, but we wanted to take it at large. We wanted to open it up to all of our students, our parents, and of course the community. The survey was in English and Spanish, and we had great response. As you can tell here, we had very simple questions that we asked. We asked, should we only have a virtual graduation? 77 respondents, or 9%, said they would recommend that. What we see from this survey results and all of the comments that our students have given us is having a virtual graduation online and a ceremony later in the summer if possible. We have 40% of the respondents that said that. And then we have 44%, which is pretty close. No virtual graduation. Confirm our students on the date of graduation, and then a ceremony later in the summer. And then, of course, the last piece was no virtual graduation and no ceremony in the summer, where you have 57 or 7% of the students. We had 853 students, which we have about 2,000 graduates. So in the total count, it's a larger representation of our students and our community, but not nearly to 50%, but we got a really good response. And so that survey closed today at 10 o'clock this morning. And from the comments, we want to be able to bring to the board as a recommendation that we proceed with a virtual graduation plan for our students, and then also look for late in July a face-to-face graduation if it's available once we determine the state of the district and the nation with this pandemic. And so that is just an update on the work that our committee has done on the class of 2020.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. Do we have any questions?
I have a couple of questions. So that data that you just showed us, Dr. Hinojosa, with the 853 respondents, that was just students?
With parents and students. So it was a mixture of both, and just in the comments, because we did have one question where they were able to give us, just their inputs, their thoughts. We had a lot of parents that responded. And you can tell the difference with the students' responses and the parents. A lot of parents that responded both in English and in Spanish. We had good participation from both community sides, and everyone is understanding of the situation there that we are in, that the whole world is facing, and appreciate what we are attempting to do to get their input, but most importantly, that we're able to celebrate them in a virtual way. And if it were to become possible, of course, they're really interested in trying to have a face-to-face ceremony.
How long was the survey? It was just an online survey. How long was it available for respondents to respond?
Yes, it went out Friday, almost a week ago Friday at about 3:30. Mm-hmm. We started the responses immediately, and it was live until today, this morning at 10 o'clock.
And we had
to
completed the
today.
distribution. Had we completed the distribution of laptops to seniors by the time that that survey went out? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. All of our seniors received their laptops or their Chromebooks last week. This week, we concentrated on our juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. But all seniors had their tools last week because we started their instruction last week.
I have a question. This is Kelly. What on the slide? I thought I saw something that said 9%. Can I see that slide again? I'm just curious if there's a way that we can, if I read that correctly, if there's a way that we can get more students, a way that we can incentivize to get them to complete the survey. I may have looked at it wrong. I think it was the last slide. Okay, yeah, graduation. So, okay, so you only had, if I'm reading this correctly, only 77 responded to the question of a virtual graduation online only. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The 341, which is 40%, responded that they would like graduation and a ceremony later. Okay, all right.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am. Thank you.
Dr. Hinosa, I have some concerns about the way we're delivering instruction with Schoology and Edgenuity as it relates to rigor and relevance. That was something that we were working on when we had the kids in our buildings. And so I want to know what we're doing to sort of track instruction, especially initially as we start out, and sort of set baseline benchmarks for participation and for, you know, how the kids are doing when they are assessed. You know, I'm feeling like I need to see much more than I normally would be comfortable with. Like normally I'd be like, yeah, every month or so, if we get a report, that's good. If we get it every other month, that's good. I'm feeling like right now, because of sort of the urgency of what we're doing, it would be better to see that kind of data much more regularly than we normally would to make sure we're not dropping any balls.
Absolutely, Mr. Adams. And I think Chief Hill talked about our instructional continuity plan, and we have moved into the monitoring phase, the implementation and the monitoring, but most importantly with our seniors. And, you know, very fortunate, thanking you as our board, you approving our platform, Schoology, because it has given us the opportunity to, you know, for example, we were just in a meeting this afternoon, the assistant superintendents and myself, and I'm able to, curriculum has all of these on their dashboard, and Chief Bradford gave me access. So I can see all of our high schools and how they're doing. I can go into Schoology, I can go straight into Spring High School, I can click on their first module. All of the students that have started their work, they're already listed. I can see the comments and the feedback that the teacher is giving the student. I can also see the grades. And that's the monitoring and supervision that we centrally have. Our principals, of course, that's their responsibility. And this morning we met with our principals, and that was the priority. Our principals to foci for this coming week. One was the implementation of our Empowered Learning at Home 2.0, the monitoring of it, and then of course the work with our special education students and making sure that the same opportunities are being given to our students. So our Schoology allows us, or allows the principals, because that is their responsibility, to on a daily basis monitor the work that's happening. And we can also do that centrally. Our other platform, and I'd like to say, you know, our curriculum department was able to do our project-based learning modules, integrating the different content areas. This first module focuses on humanities. Now, from the other side, you saw that we're also using Edgenuity, and we were very intentional in using these two platforms because, number one, we can create our own lessons to develop them to the rigor of what we believe needs to happen. And we did this centrally. We're not putting the responsibility or the work on our teachers because they have a lot of heavy lifting to do, making sure that the students are working and that they're, you know, teaching many lessons, that they're facilitating this work. So we took it on centrally. Our curriculum department developed the modules, and for our students that are struggling and need interventions, we used Edgenuity. They have already the lessons and the curriculum built in, but we didn't say we're just going to take this and give it to our students. Instead, we have our coordinator for high school response to intervention. She led that effort along with our director of academic counseling and our student support services. So every single course in Edgenuity was modified to ensure that it addressed the standards that our students need. And then also we're able to track it centrally. I'm able to see the reports on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. And so at the end of the day, the reports go out to the principals. And of course, I'm able to see it too. And I'm able to have discussions to see what's happening, what's not happening. Why are the students either not in the system? Why are they, you know, not moving in the system? And then the last piece is our teachers are maintaining logs. And the principals keep that in their files. And then of course the assistant superintendents and I have access to those logs where the teachers must communicate with the students at least twice a week. Now they're doing it more often. I can assure you in the work that they're doing, it's more often. But we are expecting that they document these conversations with the students, that they show where they've provided support, because our EIA legal still stands, and that says that we must intervene, that anytime a student is failing, we must intervene. So our teachers are documenting exactly what they're doing. You know, are they calling mom and dad? Did they reteach the lesson? What are they doing in these direct contexts? And then of course in Schoology, we're able to see that. Today we had a session, as I said, with the assistant soups. I was able to see the teachers at Spring High School already allowing students the opportunity to resubmit their first assignment. And you can see their coaching of the student and telling them, you know, change this, you know, modify this. So I feel very confident that with these two platforms, the principals are able to monitor the work that the teachers are doing, but also centrally, we also have that opportunity to monitor, document, and support our teachers and our principals out in the field.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson.
Sure, and one thing we could do, you know, if you wanted to have a little session, you know, Chief Bradford, we have taken Schoology, they have taken Schoology to another level. I think we could definitely sit down with you or any of our board members and show you how the system works, because exactly the concerns, the questions you're having, those are the discussions that as a team, as a leadership team, when we meet every day at 1 o'clock, those are the questions that we're also asking and making sure that we're supporting our teachers so that they can support our students and make sure they're successful.
Yeah, I'd like that. Thank you very much.
Definitely. We'll work with Chief Hill to schedule some time and we can do a virtual session.
You know, is it possible for us to, the trustees, to have access to the Schoology and Edgenuity lessons that are going out? I don't need to try to overview students or teachers, anything like that, but I would like to see what actually is in the curriculum and instruction.
Absolutely. And if you have the opportunity, I probably can do it on here. If you just go to our website and go to our Empowered Learning 2.0, you know, you can go straight in and you will see the entire module. Right now, what's out is our seniors module because we started them first. That's the urgency. And so you can actually see the entire module. The projects that the students have to do, you can actually see all of that. And then you can also see our Edgenuity and parts of their lesson. Of course, everything is not Edgenuity, everything is not on that front page, but you can see an overview of what they're being asked to do.
Kichara, would you like to add anything else to that?
Sure, I'll just add that for seeing student work right now is amazing. We've never really had this type of oversight at the district level. We really are breaking down major walls. So we can open up and see what the actual student work and what students are submitting. So I think we'll have data that looks very different, like videos, and we'll be able to see their presentations and see more of what they know from a holistic application of their skills. So it's not just that they're consuming now. The next project-based learning modules that they're going through, they're really producing work and they're creating. And all of the work is not in Schoology, it's actually on the web. And so it's all posted there so everyone has access to it. We also have paper copies for elementary, but they are submitting their assignments in Schoology so that even if they just have a cell phone, they can take a screenshot of their work and upload it into the system. And we have access to it and scoring it with rubrics and seeing the teacher feedback and then seeing them make revisions and redoing it. And so it's a whole new world that we're entering into with teachers really supporting as a facilitator of learning and students beginning to work more independently and autonomously. And like Dr. Hinojosa said, we just launched this week with seniors. We launch next week with K through 11, and those will be on the website, Empowered Learning at Home website. So all of those project-based learning experiences will be available for all of us to see and share. And then we can look at the back end and see, you know, how many students are submitting early and going on to the next, you know, assignment and getting feedback and seeing their writing skills. So it's one thing to see data and numbers, but it's another to look at their writing and have that rubric and really analyze it. And teachers are also being able to work much more flexibly. We had a professional learning today for our teachers to prepare them for the launch next week. And they are finding that, you know, they can have office hours and meet with certain students at certain times and follow up with students based on their needs. So I think we're entering into a really exciting time in education. Unfortunately, it had to happen because of just this health concern, the pandemic. But it does give us a great opportunity to look at learning from a different perspective and really design learning for students and really capture more of what they know other than paper, pencil, test assignments or computer-based assignments, but really from them creating and sharing their own voice. And so we'll definitely be able to bring, you know, examples and samples and, you know, data around the work that they're doing to end the school year, and definitely looking forward to what this leads to in the fall when we, you know, come back together, because students will be used to learning in a whole different way. They will have tried things that they may not have ever tried. They will learn things that they may not have ever learned. And so they'll be much more, I think, just engaged if we give them the opportunity to really take a lead in their learning and explore and research. I will say this first project-based learning experience does have research as a component of it, and teaching those, you know, research skills and the presentation skills and just, you know, recording yourself and uploading it into a platform is something that now we'll see middle and high school students doing in preparation for. That's a lifelong skill. So it's exciting what we're doing. It's not ideal situation, you know, no one would have wanted it to happen like this. But as far as what we're providing for our students and the resources and supports, I think we're on a great path right now.
I'd like to support what you're saying, that we hoped we were going this direction, but we didn't want to have it under these circumstances. What I'm concerned about is something even Winford was talking about as well. I just want to look at things and assure myself about the rigor of the projects.
Hello.
And I'm not trying to interfere in the instructional process at all. I just, I feel a little disconnected right now. And don't get to visit teachers in schools, and I would just love to see what is actually being assigned to students. Thank you.
Okay, definitely.
Our MySpring
Hi, this is
dashboard.
Trustee Durant. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, Justine.
Yes, we can.
Okay. It's been a struggle. I lost power and everything right as the meeting was starting. So, so my attendance is depending on how long my batteries hold up. I did want to ask a question, and it's already been asked and answered. My apologies. Are we tracking which students are not logging in? I think everything we're doing is amazing. I'm very proud of all your work. I've been bragging about it and reposting. But are we tracking who's not logging in, and what kind of outreach are we doing to engage them?
Yes, so I think Dr. Hinojosa can share as well, but that's one of the pieces of, you know, whatever we provide is now, it's great for the students that are taking advantage of it and that are engaged with it, but then it's also checking in on the students who haven't yet. And that is definitely an ongoing conversation where it could just be a wellness check and talking to the student and talking to the family. But every week, that is one of our priorities, is to check in with our students. And, you know, everyone is in a different situation, but when we go in and look at, you know, the work and see the assignments and see who has, you know, checked in, submitted, that gives us a really quick glance to go back and touch base with the principal or at the campus level for them to know who's not participating, and then what are we doing about it. And so they have formed PLC groups. So one of the ways that we're doing it is these are grade level project-based learning experiences. And so each grade level group through their PLC is really supporting students as a team, instead of it being one individual teacher who, okay, I'm the algebra teacher, I just work with my algebra class. Now they're seeing themselves as the 9th grade team, and we're all supporting 9th graders in this work. And you may be the one that's doing the touch points and the calls just to check on students. I'm the one that's holding the office hours to do the mini lesson and the tutorials. Another partner is the one who is going in and checking the assignments and giving feedback. So it gives us flexibility, but that is one of the things that it's on everyone's radar is, what about the student who doesn't ever pick up the packet or submit the packet back, or who doesn't log in, or who hasn't uploaded an assignment, is really making sure that we are documenting, that we are reaching out, that we are just checking to see why. I mean, it's not at all to penalize a student, because we know there's lots of different scenarios happening, but it's really to find out why and how we can support. And we've already done, you know, measures to get resources to different families or to get them connected. And so that is definitely on our priority. Is our goal is 100% will be engaged in learning at home.
I'm sorry, I wanted to just add to answer your question a little further, Trustee Durant. What we also have built into, because of course students are remotely learning, teachers are providing instructional support remotely, and so there's a change in the way everyone conducts business. One of the things that's built into the teachers' daily schedule is they have a 15-minute huddle in the morning where all the teachers that are working with a group of students are able to talk to each other to kind of just set and make sure their day is organized and talk about what they're going to do. They have a 15-minute debrief huddle at the end of the day as well. Built into their schedule is time for them to do some individual planning where they see gaps for what they're providing to students. There's an AM and a PM session that's built into the schedule for them to provide instructional support. Instructional support can look like many things. It could look like support to a large group of students, a small group. It could be a one-on-one where a student is struggling, where they can actually work with a student or a student and a parent to make sure that they can engage into the system and they can get access, as well as making sure that they understand what the assignments are and what the expectations are. There's also a time built into the day, every day, daily in the schedule for what we call interventions or remediation or for some type of tutorial assistance. In addition to that, there's time built into teachers' schedules every day for them to have a contact point with a parent or a guardian. So if I don't see your presence in some way, I don't get a touch from you as a student, they actually have time, flexible time built into their schedules. So they have a block to communicate with parents. So it's not just one touch point, it's multiple touch points of different kinds throughout the day built into the teacher's schedule. And then the students also have a schedule that recommends what they do throughout the day as well. So combined together, along with the access that principals have to monitor and be able to lean in and listen to the instruction and the support that's being given, as well as the assistant superintendents, and for us here centrally to be able to do so as well. We believe we created a tiered system with our instructional model to ensure that we are reaching students and that they are responsive and that we're not leaving anyone behind.
Thank you.
I was just gonna sort of piggyback on what Dr. Jensen was asking about. Our MySpace dashboard does not have access to the curriculum materials. I know that because I see what my kids' dashboard looks like. And so they have the Schoology links and the Edgenuity links and the textbook links, but our board dashboard does not have that. So I don't know if that's an easy fix or what, but just to put that out there.
Okay, for now, we are posting all of our curriculum on the Empowered Learning at Home website, which is accessible through the Spring ISD website. If you just go to Spring ISD, you'll see the Empowered Learning at Home. And the first part that we've launched that moves us into instruction is that Senior 2020. So if you go to the senior page, that's where you'll see the curriculum that moved us from a district that was closed preparing into just starting this week. We're now closed, but we're providing instruction. And so with seniors, it started this week. And then for next week, you'll see all of the project-based learning plans for pre-K through 11th grade on that same site. Under the instructional tab on your my.springisd portal, when you log in, you should have the Schoology icon there.
Yeah, I don't have an instructional tab.
Oh,
I know what you're talking about because
Okay,
I see
okay.
it on my kids' dashboard.
Okay, okay.
I don't know if any other trustees have that, but I
Okay.
don't.
Okay. We thought we added that for you all at the beginning of the school year, so I can put in a request so that you can have access to Schoology, and we can even create a course, you know, you can play in it, and we'll make sure that you do have access to the curriculum. It's a group, so we can add you into that curriculum group as well.
Rhonda, you're muted.
Thank you. I had to go off and use my phone, so I'm unsure whether I could be heard.
I think both of your devices are on right now, and so it's giving us feedback because the audio from one device is picking up on the other.
Okay, is that better?
No, they're both still connected.
Okay, I'm trying to just use my phone.
So are you only going to use the one with the video that's turned on? I can put the other one on hold.
Is that better?
No. Here, let me try this. Okay. It should be better now.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Bradford, I did have a question for you. Are our students receiving back grades or some type of indication as to how they're coming along and what they're doing such that it will not be a surprise for them at the end of the semester in terms of grades, because I know some of them are concerned about grades. And I'm speaking now of seniors too, worried about how their found grade will go on their transcript that'll be sent. But definitely for the 9 through 11 that'll start next week, they are probably concerned about grade point average grades in the next year or so.
Yes, they are concerned. I actually was able to talk to some students today to relieve some of their stress and fears and worry. So yes, we are doing the assignments that start as part of instruction. And so they'll have about 2 assignments each week, and they will be graded by their teacher teams at their campus using a rubric. So we're launching with them being able to really align their work to their standards, and that's how we can also connect and ensure the rigor is there. So they will have grades. We will provide progress reports. We will provide a report card as well, so that we'll have check-ins so that they shouldn't be surprised at all. Also, just because they're working at home, there's a more likelihood that their parents can also see some of what they're doing and can also see very easily, if the student logs in, what the grades are. But we are providing grades that are consistent with about 2 grades per week and a progress report and a report card. But also that's why we have our fabulous teachers who are reaching out and supporting students in the process, so that if they see a student is falling behind, they can actually, check in with them, have them resubmit an assignment, give them multiple attempts as well to bring that grade score up. So that's also one thing that we're tracking centrally as well when we go in and look at it to see, do we have anyone below a certain score, and then circle back in with that campus because we don't want to penalize students during this time. We want to give them every support possible to.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you. We do not want to penalize anyone. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you, Ms. Bradford, and thank you, Dr. Hinojosa, as well. We will move on to our next item. So I'd like to recognize our Chief Operations Officer, Mark Miranda.
Hi, good evening, President Newhouse, members of the board, Dr. Watson. I'm going to be on page 40 of your board binder. And what we're looking at here is the annual allotment and TEKS certification for 2020-2021. Obviously, annually, this is something we do every year. And what we're doing is we're certifying that the district's technology and instructional materials allotment is used only for expenses allowed by the Texas Education Code. And so for the current year also, we're certifying that the district has instructional materials that collectively cover all the elements of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills of the required curriculum, of the curriculum required by the Texas Education Code. So this is an annual certification, just certifying that we're using the technology and instructional materials as required by the Texas Education Code. Any questions there? That will need superintendent and board president and secretary signature. So if there are no questions there, I'm going to try to see if I can bring up my PowerPoint and to talk a little bit about the 9th grade centers. So can you guys see my screen? Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up. Okay, so a little bit about the 9th grade centers. Obviously, with COVID-19, things have changed a little bit in terms of what's happening from a construction standpoint. At this point in time, we're not certain what that ultimate impact of COVID-19 is going to be on the 9th grade centers, specifically on opening the schools in a timely fashion. Obviously, these were all scheduled originally to open in August with everything else. What we're seeing right now is a shortage of critical supplies. And so subcontractors are starting to pre-purchase materials to have on hand if manufacturing stops. And where we really think we're going to see the impact of the virus is really towards the end of these projects, and it's going to be related to our supply chain. And so that might not be felt until we get a couple more months deeper into these projects. And so when we're talking about receiving furniture and technology items that are sometimes harder to procure and maybe coming from places that are really heavily impacted by the virus. In terms of purchasing and actually putting in our request for those materials for furniture, fixtures, and equipment and technology, the majority of those purchases are complete and should be very close to being finalized as we speak. Additionally, with our subcontractors continuing to work, they've all been provided with letters to designate them as essential workers in case they were to get stopped or what have you, which has eased a little bit of concern there. Right now, we're only aware of one subcontractor who's decided to close their shop, and so that was an impact. I'm going to give you a campus by campus rundown as well. So for both Westfield and Dekaney, probably because of the virus, right? Their workforce is down anywhere from 15 to 30% from where we were before spring break. And so we have very definitely, whether some of the subcontractors have decided to stay home or they have illnesses in their families, not them, but 15 to 30% of our workforce has decreased at both Westfield and Dekaney. Spring's a little different, and I'll give you the spring update in just a second. And so at Westfield specifically, the demolition of all the areas, remember this is a demo and repurpose of that building. The demolition of all areas is complete. There were some unforeseen issues that we didn't have anywhere in the drawings that were available to us. Those issues were related to a suspended slab that was encountered in large portions of the building, meaning the slab doesn't actually go to the ground, but it's suspended between piers. And so that was not something that we anticipated seeing. The good part about that is that these areas that are below slab, we have begun to install the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems around those, and we're pouring the concrete back in to try and fill in those gaps. And so we're working diligently on the Westfield ninth grade center. The new dance and the CTE classrooms in the back are beginning to proceed with excavation, and select fill for the foundation is coming in on that one as well. That building was, if you recall, financed a little bit later on, and so that building was scheduled to be a little bit further out than the rest of the building. That's the additional building towards the back for, again, that's just for a new dance area and CTE to support that building. For the ninth grade over at Dekaney High School, just got word that they're going to be shutting that project down over the Easter weekend, and they'll be returning Monday. There is some fear of the COVID-19 and social distancing impacting the productivity of these projects and having an impact on the contractor's ability to maintain schedules here. At Dekaney High School, the finishes are being installed where possible. I don't know if you've before we were locked down, if you were able to get over there, but it's an impressive building towards the back of Dekaney, and it's kind of really just kind of rises up from where that parking lot was behind there. The contractor Telipson is currently working with Harris County and Centerpoint to establish permanent power to the building, which is really a big milestone to be able to start getting a lot more things done. But that permanent power, due probably to COVID-19 as well, has been delayed slightly. And so we're a little bit behind on getting the permanent power to Dekaney High School. And I say permanent, go ahead.
I'm gonna remind you to move your slides.
Okay, am I not on? Oh, my bad. Look at me, I'm moving my slides and I thought you guys, so here's the Westfield, there's the Dekaney High School. And so if you haven't seen it, it's a pretty impressive building that you'll be able to see back there. And it's gonna really complement the current high school as well in the architecture and design. So for Spring High School, let me move my slide again. There we go. Okay, so for Spring High School, We did have a little bit of a hiccup that we were alerted to this week. Spring High School's down about 50% of its manpower from Monday, and one of the biggest reasons there is that we did have two door installers working as subcontractors at Springs Ninth Grade Center that were tested and came back COVID-19 positive. So as soon as we were confirmed on the test results, the project was completely shut down for a period of time. Just to let you know, these two installers have actually not been at work for several weeks. They were not at work for several weeks, and they were quarantined off-site when they began first to develop symptoms, and we just recently received back those test results. So once those test results were received back, the site was shut down. It's been sanitized with the hospital grade cleaner, and the manpower is down. They have brought in some additional manpower to begin wiping down surfaces to help maintain the sanitation of the site. And we're trying to ramp that site back up, but doing so very cautiously. We certainly want to keep everybody safe, and so they're doing that. And the contractor here has done a really good job of trying to keep everyone safe. So in the building, Spring High School, we're continuing with the interior finishes. Above ceiling completion is happening. In all areas, the ceiling grid is being installed where that's been approved to move forward. Ceramic tile is being installed in the restrooms and the hallways. Walls in the classrooms are being painted. Casework is being installed in all areas where there's permanent HVAC. And also the permanent gas supply is being installed along with electrical power, and AT&T is coming out to work on the phone lines. We are making progress at all three sites, but obviously the concerns with the virus have us a little on edge trying to determine what it's ultimately going to do to our timelines. And we're going to continue to keep monitoring this as we go. Any questions?
So, Chief, just what this sounds like to me is if the crisis is over with the coronavirus, even if it were over tomorrow, we would not be ready for students on the first day of school this fall. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would suggest that we may begin planning in that direction, especially because of our supply chain issue. We may be complete with construction, but we don't have furniture or we don't have technology. And obviously without both of those things, we wouldn't be able to open the school. So we haven't had our vendors tell us that they're not going to be able to meet their delivery dates, but we're very, I usually like to say that we're optimistic, but I think that the better idea is that we're a little pessimistic that those things are going to come in on time. So we're continuing to look at that. The good thing, if the silver lining to that is we have all of the space we need in the current facilities. So if this was something that stretched out past August, we wouldn't have issues, I don't believe, in terms of needing space in the current facilities. It would be just like they were before spring break.
Chief Miranda, the supply chain problem, is it because some of these products come from countries that have a COVID-19 problem, or is it a problem within the U.S.?
All of the above. So some of the products are manufactured overseas, and then we are seeing just regular supply chain problems because of the shutdown of the economy countrywide, really worldwide. And so I would say that the answer to that is all of the above. Yeah.
The other thing I would like to ask is I would just absolutely love to go in and see some of these facilities. And obviously we're not going to do it as a group in a van, and I maintain social distance, but if you could think about maybe in May, June, July, if there's any opportunity for us to go in and see the progress that's being made, I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Any other question? I think that's it for me then. Thank you.
Ms. Newhouse, if we could go back, we have one item that's Lupita didn't have an opportunity to present, and that was the resolution for grading. I think she might, there she is, yes. Can we go back to Dr. Hinojosa's second discussion regarding the resolution for grading?
Yes.
Go ahead, Dr. H, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Newhouse. And definitely, I'm going to bring you back a couple of slides. I'm going to go back to page 36 in your packet. So on page 36 is the agenda item for the resolution. As you heard me make the presentation of the committee recommendations that came to senior leadership, to cabinet, we would like to propose a resolution so that we are able to graduate our seniors and ensure that they're able to proceed. So on page 36, and then followed on page 38 is the actual resolution. And so specifically, this resolution is related to our EIC local, our local guidelines. And so the first part of the resolution is that we would like for the final class rank calculations that it shall include the first semester on a high school campus through the end of the fall semester of the 2019-2020 school year. Okay. And that all local honors, including our valedictorian and salutatorian, be determined based on the semester, the fall semester of 2019-2020 school year. And the last part, the third part of this resolution, that students shall not be required to take the College Board AP exam in order to receive the AP weighted credit for that corresponding course. And of course, our counselors and our teachers, our administrators, we are preparing our students to take the AP exam. But due to any unforeseen situation that our students may be experiencing, we would, through this resolution, request that the students not be required to take the exam and that they be allowed to receive the corresponding weights for these courses. And this, of course, is a resolution we'd like for you to study and consider, and on Tuesday be able to act upon.
Okay, I have a question. So
Yes, ma'am.
what happens, what about the students that were not passing at the end of the fall semester? So what are we going to do? What are we going to do about them?
Absolutely, and that's the part of the work that our counselors have been doing since well, number one, we already had many of those students identified, but once we came back from spring break, going back and making sure if there were any students, for example, they may be enrolled in English 4 and they failed the first semester, what we've done is immediately identified them and put them into a credit recovery program. Each one of the comprehensive high schools have a credit recovery lab teacher. So very specifically, they are working with those students that may have failed the first semester or any failing courses to ensure that they recover that credit right now during this period of time.
And Dr. Hinojosa, this is just class rank and right? Actually, for grades, we're still going to count the 4th and 6th 6 weeks.
Correct.
So they'll have
That's
a full year of
correct.
grades, but this is
Yes.
just for class rank and honors.
Absolutely. You are absolutely correct. In our presentation, yes, the students will still receive
Okay.
grades this spring semester. We're just saying that it
Okay.
not impact their class rank and their GPA, that be frozen as of the end of the fall semester. But they will still have grades this whole spring semester.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. This is Trustee Justine. Can you hear Justine Durant?
Yes, ma'am.
This is specifically for ranking, and I don't understand the first bullet. So we're saying we're going to use, the way it reads is the whole year. So what's different? Am I interpreting that wrong?
Currently, the way our policy reads, and we actually, along with many districts in our area, changed our policy back in 2015, 2016 to ensure that class ranks and GPAs were calculated at the end of the 5th 6 weeks. And that made sure that our seniors worked all the way through. Previously, our GPA and class ranks used to be frozen at the end of the fall semester. And so what we are asking the board to consider through this resolution is to allow for us to use the class rank and GPA as of the end of the fall semester, and then award all honors that go with that class rank and GPA. Our Val and Sal, along with our top 10% students, would be calculated at the end of the fall semester for this school year.
As opposed to the spring?
Correct.
Yes, ma'am, that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay, I'm good now. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions related to the resolution?
I'd like to compliment all your committees. I think they came up with workable solutions in a bad situation.
Thank you, Dr. Jensen. I can tell you they've been working hard at, not only looking at what policy allows, but most importantly, how can we ensure, the state is asking us all along the way to make sure that the students are meeting mastery of the courses that they're taking now. So how can we ensure that while also being very cognizant of the situation that our students are facing and be able to support them along the way? So this resolution will definitely recognize the work that our students, have done, and also recognizes the work that they will continue to do this spring semester.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. This seems to be a fair situation for us.
Thank you,
Fair
Ms.
solution. Now we will continue with.
I have one more question regarding that, and
Sure.
I don't know what's happening with the colleges, but a lot of times their rankings impact scholarship and admission. And so if we're moving it from spring, we do it early for that reason. And so now that we're making this change, how is that going to be perceived by the universities and impact those rankings that would give them the admittance based on their ranking?
So the good thing, Ms. Durant, is that we published and of course we called it unofficial, but the good thing by having this class rank at the end of the fall semester, it has given the students the opportunity to now apply for colleges and apply for scholarships with an official class rank. Once this resolution goes by, that unofficial class rank we gave them in January will become official, and they can start receiving their scholarships and early acceptance into the colleges.
Thank you.
One other thing with that, Ms. Duran, is so I sat on a call this week, the first one with higher ed, and some of the same things that I sit on calls with daily with the superintendents for K-12, they're grappling with the exact same things. There's procedures and policies in higher ed that they've always done that they can't do as well, and they're trying to figure out those things as well.
Okay, so we are collaborating. All right, thank you.
And the collaboration is really strong, Ms. Durant, with all of our Region 4 districts. The superintendent meets with the superintendents. Of course, he sends us those recommendations, and then we also meet with our counterparts around the district. And this resolution is a resolution that many boards are considering and potentially adopting, because it is one that's very solid as it relates to our students, making sure that their work is recognized, but most importantly, it will allow them to apply for those colleges and universities without any negative impact.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, for our next item, I'd like to recognize our Chief of Police, Kenneth Culbert.
Good afternoon, Madam President and the Board of Trustees and Dr. Watson. If you'll join me on page 44 and 45 of your packet, you'll find the police department is requesting permission to apply for a grant. This grant is through our local COG, and it's for ballistic vest and ballistic helmets for in case of an active shooter for our police officers. The request is to go ahead and apply and receive those funds once they're awarded, in a total amount of $51,750.
Has everyone had a time to look at that?
Yes, and I thought the irony of this, I am so glad that police officers are getting this extra protection, and I just wish you also got some N95 masks along with this, and eye protection, because it seems to me that our law enforcement throughout Harris County is coming down with this virus. I'm very concerned about your officers and who they're coming in contact with and the protection they have for that.
Well, thank you for that. I sit on a weekly call with the area police chiefs, and we're all grappling with the same problem. I call it the moving balloon. As soon as we find a vendor, there's some legitimacy issues with some vendors. And so there's some worries of fraud coming to law enforcement. So we're trying to do our best to make sure that all of the funds that we're awarded as police chiefs, that those funds don't become mishandled by some fraud. But we are desperately trying to acquire those for our staff. But obviously, if you see watching the news, it is a national problem.
I have a question. I don't know much about ammunition and that sort of thing, but it specifically says rifle resistant. So I'm assuming that will protect against any gun, or I don't understand.
That's a great question. So the vests that we currently wear daily, they are a level 2 and level 3A vest. And so there's a certain ballistic round of just handguns that they will stop. But rifle rounds are they're longer and thinner in diameter, and they move at a faster foot. They bring more foot-pounds per second, so they move faster. And so based on that, the body armor, the level 3A, the helmets and the rifle resistance plates that are level 4, they're designed to stop those smaller, faster penetrating rounds.
So just for clarification, this will protect you all against most weapons that are used in active shooter situations.
Correct. Yes, most active shooters, the trend is some type of a rifle. And so, yeah, it will help save lives and protect and if you read the rest of the grant as well, the carriers will be able to place a plate on the front of the officer as well as the back of them as well. So they'll have hopefully a 360-degree protection.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate your being with us there. And we hope you can get those N95 masks. It is very important.
I do have a maybe a silly question, but who is Kelly Klein?
And I'll let you answer that question.
Kelly Klein is a member of the financial services team. She is our assistant superintendent of federal and state compliance, and her team oversees the grants operation, helps out with the grants within the district. And so they were instrumental in helping our police team pursue this grant.
Okay. I just didn't recall ever meeting her. So
I'll have to introduce you at the next board meeting when we're in person.
thank you, Ms. Westbrook.
Okay, well, Ms. Westbrooks, since you are right there, you are our next person on the agenda. Please continue, Ms. Westbrooks.
Thank you, President Newhouse and members of the board. It is so good to actually see everyone here tonight and know that you're doing good. It's great to see your faces. Our first item tonight begins on page 49, and it's our monthly list of taxpayer refunds. And I just wanted to see if there were any questions on the item. I will point out that we have a refund that's listed here to the Spring ISD tax office, and that was because we had issued a refund and then realized that this taxpayer had another account that had taxes due, so we refunded the refund to Spring and then applied that payment to that overpayment to another account that was under that same taxpayer. Okay. If there are no questions on that particular item, then we will move on to our next item, which the list is on page 52. And this is our cooperative purchases of $50,000 or more. And we have our list there for the time frame February 16th through March 15th. And we just have a few items there, and the majority are from our one-time cost money that we had with replacing some of our white fleet in transportation. Okay. Doesn't look as though we have any questions on that item, then I will keep going. Our next item begins on page 54, and this is the annual audit of our financial statements. It's the engagement letter for our external auditors, Whitley Penn, which the board approved at the March board meeting. And so this is the engagement letter to begin the work for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2020. And it lists the fee on page 6 of the document, page 6 of 11, which is on page 59. And so they are scheduled to begin their interim audit on April 27th, and they'll be in the district or virtually assisting the district between April 27th until about May 6th. And as of right now, the timeline for our external audit is remaining the same, but TEA has told us that that is an area that they are monitoring to see whether or not it's feasible to have annual audits due at the same time as always, which is 150 days after the fiscal year end. So as of right now, we're moving along with our normal schedule. And if that doesn't change, then we'll have an audit report to you all in November at the November board meeting. Okay. And with that, our next item, I'll just keep moving, and begins on page 66. And this is a request for proposal for motor fuels. And we had 9 vendors that responded to the solicitation. And we are recommending Suncoast Resources as the primary vendor for motor fuels. And we're also recommending that we have the board approve a secondary vendor that will come in handy if the first vendor doesn't have supply or if there's an issue where we need to move to a secondary vendor. And the secondary award recommendation is to Southern Counties Oil and Gas. And so this would be for all of the motor fuel needs throughout the district.
Ms. Westbrooks,
Yes, sir.
do we purchase fuel in blocks like commodities?
Meaning all at once, or we purchase it we
Yes.
purchase as needed?
Okay, okay,
Yes.
so, okay, that answers, thank you.
Mhm. Okay. And if there are no additional questions, then we'll move to our next agenda item, which begins on page 71. And this is a request for proposal where we did a request for construction manager at risk for several summer construction projects that we have coming up. And there's a list of those projects that begins on page 74 of your document. And of course, we know that we're making some changes to some programs throughout the district, and one of those being the Bammel Middle School, where we're adding some elementary grade levels at that campus. And so there's some retrofitting that needs to happen there in preparation for that. And several other construction projects that we've talked about at previous board meetings, including the Spring High School natatorium. So we packaged all of those projects together and went out for a proposal, and we had one company that responded to that, and it is a Telepson, who we've had lots of interaction with as a part of the 2016 bond program. And so that is who we're bringing forward as the recommended vendor for these projects that are scheduled to begin over the summer of 2020. And so I know Mr. Miranda will keep us abreast of any changes or anything that would impact the schedule that we have set out for those projects. Okay. Either my screen is frozen or you all are very quiet and there are no questions. Okay.
I had a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
It was just around the renovation at the Anderson building, the central office. I thought we were going to do some expansion. I don't see that listed. You all aren't getting more space?
No, ma'am, we're not getting more space. What if you you're talking about the administration building, right?
Yeah.
So if you recall, the building is really two buildings, an older half of the building and then the newer half of the building. The older half of the building, specifically on the second floor where our curriculum and instruction department resides, along with some others that are sprinkled in there, is a labyrinth of offices and small closet space that we have people officed in. Unfortunately, when that work was done originally, it wasn't done in the way it probably should have been, in that we have HVAC units, registers that are only cooling a closet and not cooling the areas they were intended, because temporary walls were put in. So what we're doing is reconfiguring that space so that it's more useful to the departments that are occupying that space, and really bringing it up to what most of the other building is.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a quick question in reference to the audit. Are those, is that done every other year, or how often is that done?
It's every year. Yes, ma'am. We're required by law.
Year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And they come in, they spend a total of about 6 weeks in the district. They start with an interim audit in the spring, and they audit all of our transactions and review our internal controls, starting with the beginning of the fiscal year from about July 1st through about March 31st. And then they'll come back in around late August, early September, and they'll spend about 3 more weeks in the district, and they'll review all of our transactions from April 1st through the end of the fiscal year. And then they review our
comprehensive annual financial report and issue an auditor's report in November.
So
I just wanted
I'm
to
sure that
refresh.
price is, that fee is market price for the market, that's the going rate.
It is. It's a very competitive fee. And we have one of our neighboring districts that does an analysis each year. They do a survey. And so we always look at that information to ensure that we are getting competitive pricing and that it's comparable with what other districts are paying. Similar size.
And we are getting a new audit team, correct? We're getting.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Our audit partner and our audit senior has rotated, and the staff level always rotates. But we're moving our partner and our manager and senior around.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Our summer project at Bama Middle School. We are putting in 4 pre-K classrooms. Are we separating them from the other area of the middle school?
Yeah, so there's a wing in Bama Middle School that has several empty classes in it, and that's going to be an area that they're going to be looking at doing that. And so they're going to be shifting students from that part of the wing that's probably about 90% empty to other parts of the building that's empty now for them to be able to hold it. If you remember, Bama Middle School at one time had over, I think, 1,500 students in it. And with the boundary change, we were able to take that under 1,000 to 800 to 900 students in it. So they have a lot of space in the middle school.
Okay.
Just a comment, many years ago in HISD, they did this with the high school. And the observations in the high school are that the kids, the older kids, acted better. They wanted to not act foolish and bad in front of the little kids. So I'm hoping for, maybe this is a idea we should just carry through.
Role models.
This is going to be nice to see those pre-K in the cafeteria. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And with that, we'll move to our next item, which is an update on the 2020-21 budget development. And I will bring up a PowerPoint presentation to walk us through that discussion. Okay, does everyone have the 2021 budget screen up? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Great. So we wanted to just do an update of where we are in the process. And so just bringing us back to those assumptions that we have as we're developing the budget for this next school year. And of course, our projected enrollment at this point in time is 35,422 students. And that's what we've been using to develop all of our staffing projections for the next school year. We did have, and we'll talk a lot more about the pandemic in just a moment, but we did have a meeting with our demographers, Templeton Demographics, and they just gave us an update of where we are. And just like everyone else at this point in time, we're having to wait on some additional information to know exactly what the impact of the pandemic will be. But we are anticipating seeing some updated projections in about the middle of May from Templeton Demographics. And at that point in time, we'll compare those projections to what we see right now. On this next item here is the assumptions that we're making with our property taxes. As we know, this is the second year of the biennium, and that calls for additional statewide compression of our tax rate. And so the statewide compression rate is at 91.64%. And that's for all districts if you're at or
below the 2.5%. But of course, as we discussed at the last board meeting, the more our property values grow, the more our tax rate is compressed. And so at this point in time, we're estimating about a 5% growth in our property values. And with that 5% growth, that would have us with a maintenance and operations tax rate of this 0.9578. Right, we had a lot of discussion about the timing of the maximum rate compression rate that'll come out from TEA. And the last we've heard is that that could be delayed for quite some time. And so when we do our truth in taxation posting, that is required for us to post to the public the anticipated tax rate that we're going to need to support our budgets that will pass in June. The guidance is to post the statewide compression rate, because at that point in time, of course, we won't have our finalized maximum compression rate because we won't receive our finalized values until August of this year. And that's the normal timing. We'll see how that's impacted by the pandemic as well. So this is just an estimate, and that's what we're using to plan our budget at this point in time. And of course, we'll receive our actual estimate of values from the Harris County Appraisal District at the very end of this month, on or before April 30th. And so we have heard from the Harris County Appraisal District that they are on track as of now to provide those estimated values to us before the end of the month as scheduled. So I don't like seeing this, but it is our reality right now. And so COVID-19 has what we're calling the interruption of everything. And so naturally, so it's having an impact on our budget preparation. So I just pulled out 2 tidbits of information that we've seen from the 2 areas that impact our budget the most. And of course, that's our state aid and our local property values. And so the comptroller gave an interview with the Texas Tribune earlier this week. And throughout that interview, he's talking about the state of the Texas economy. And of course, what's happening with the pandemic has caused an economic downturn. And the comptroller was very clear with saying that the state of Texas has entered into a recession as a result of that. And so we know the Texas comptroller is responsible for all of the revenue estimations that are used to develop the state's budget, which ultimately funds school districts. And the largest revenue source for the state of Texas is sales tax. With businesses closed down and not bringing in revenue, they're also not charging sales tax, which goes into the state's budget. So naturally, that is having that will have a significant impact on the state's budget, which will impact, of course, districts' budgets. So the timing of everything right now is a little tricky. The comptroller is saying that for the 2019-20 fiscal year, everything looks as though we're going to be fine. We've been told from TEA that we're using an average to come up with our average daily attendance, which is how we'll be funded for the 2019-20 budget year. 2020-21 is the second year of the biennium. The comptroller is anticipating putting out updated estimates of the state's revenue in around about July of this year. He doesn't expect those estimates to be good. We had originally anticipated going into the next legislative session in January of 21 with a surplus budget, the state going into the legislative session with a surplus budget. At this point in time, that doesn't seem likely at all. And they're anticipating that they'll go into the session with a deficit budget. And so a deficit budget at the state level means a trickle down deficit or a loss of revenue to school districts typically. So right now, the guidance is if we anticipate having a difficult budget session when the legislators come back in January of 21, it behooves us to have a conservative budget for the 2021 school year so that whatever cuts are yet to come will be a little less deep if we plan accordingly now. So with that said, his office, the comptroller's office, is saying that his team is beginning to freeze on new hires they're not making any salary adjustments, and they're looking for opportunities to save. So this gives the district the opportunity to change our focus a little bit throughout our 2021 budget preparation to do the same. And that's to look for cost saving opportunities so that whatever may be on the horizon, we can lessen the impact of that by making prudent, conservative decisions as we create our budget for the 2021. So at the last budget meeting, we had come to you all and we said, we'll have numbers in April. We'll show you where we are in April and we'll bring some proposals forward. The reason we're requesting to have the April 30th budget session is so that we can have a little bit more information about what's happening with the Texas economy, the national economy, which of course also impacts everything and everyone, but specifically the Texas economy and how this is impacting us. We also see that oil prices have gone down considerably. So when the comptroller's office did the initial revenue estimates for this biennium, it was based upon oil being $50 to $55 per barrel. As of today, oil was trading at $26 a barrel. So of course, those things also have impacts on the state's budget and the funding that's available going forward. So not to paint a dismal picture, but to just discuss and sit in our current reality and take some time to make sure that we're moving into this next budget cycle so that we're setting ourselves up to weather the storm the best way that we can. And of course, there is no precedent. No one knows, because this isn't a hurricane that we've seen before, and we know how it impacts us. This is a pandemic that we haven't seen. So that's coming from the comptroller's office. The other side of things is the Harris County Appraisal District and our local property values. So you heard me mention just a moment ago that the appraisal district fully intends to have our value estimates to us by the end of the month as planned. Well, that is because statute says that property values are based upon the value of the properties as of January 1st. January 1st was before the pandemic and values had already been set. However, there's a question, and I just read a few moments ago that Paul Betancourt had requested an Attorney General opinion on whether or not the temporary disaster exemption applies to this situation. So a temporary disaster exemption says that if your property is damaged by a disaster that happens in your area as declared by the governor, then you can receive a proportionate exemption on your property values. Everyone pretty much agrees that this doesn't apply here because the pandemic is impacting just about everything, but it didn't directly cause any damage to any properties. So where this could impact us is if by some odd reason it is somehow applied, it could impact our values because appeals could be filed, so on and so forth. However, what we really feel is the impact is going to be of the pandemic is going to be on our tax collections, because individuals are losing their jobs. They're having financial problems. Businesses are not able to operate as normal. And so when they do receive that tax bill in the mail in October and November, they may not have the ability to pay. And that will impact our tax collections, which would have an immediate impact on our budget. So those are the sorts of things that we're grappling with right now and trying to figure out where's that balance between we don't know what tomorrow holds because this is completely unprecedented. This is an uncertain time for everyone and everybody. And also making sure that we're continuing with the district's vision and doing everything that we need to do to provide the absolute best education for the 35,000 plus students that we have in Spring ISD. So that's where we are at this moment in time. And so I'd like to pause and just see if there are any questions before I move to the next portion of the presentation.
This is Debbie Jensen. Ms. Westbrooks, I am probably the big pessimist here. Trustees Gonzalez and Durant, if you remember what happened when the Texas legislature thought they were going to have a shortfall, but they didn't have, what they did to school districts on cutting our budgets and how hard those times were. I just really, I applaud you, Ms. Westbrook's going conservatively here, because I really think that between small businesses being in trouble, people not shopping and paying sales tax like they do regularly, as well as oil and gas, we really could have a bad time here that we need to live through. Okay, that's it.
Yes, ma'am. Point well taken. And another issue too is with the stimulus money. So we know that the federal government is issuing stimulus money to the state. And right now it seems as though the majority of those funds are supposed to go straight to school districts. However, one of the things that we recall vividly from the last time that we were in the circumstance with budget cuts is that the state used some of the federal dollars to fill holes in the state budget. And when those federal dollars went away, the bottom fell out, and those cuts were catastrophic, to say the least, because Spring cut the budget by $30 million that year. So that's the other thing that we're just paying really close attention to, is what economic stimulus funds come from the federal government and how those funds are used at the state level as well, and how that could make for an even worse situation down the line. So we're all still worried. Yes, ma'am.
This is Trustee Duran, and I applaud your foresight in getting us prepared, because to Dr. Jensen's point, at that time, it wasn't even they anticipated something was coming, and we got hit with the 35 million decrease. But at that time, we didn't have our fund balance. It's a little healthier right now, so hopefully that will help us overcome some of what we're seeing. And so I know I've often pushed on you to dip into that fund balance, but you've held fast. And that may be a good thing right now, that we have that cushion. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
So kudos, great job.
Thank you. Okay.
Just a comment. It'll be kind of interesting to see if organizations, if districts around the state that have an A first rating, whether this better than districts, significantly better than districts that have like a C first rating. I'll just be curious to see.
That's a good point, Mr. Adams. And typically that means how the funds have been used. And so that's a good point. That's a good point. Okay. So with all that, we are actually moving along with the budget development process. And so we have had all of the budget staffing meetings with every single principal across the district based upon the projected enrollment that we have now. We've had those meetings, we've set the staffing for those positions, and all of our departments have turned in their zero-based budget templates, and we're just about done with the meetings with each individual chief to go over all of the departmental budgets. We have given that nudge to go back and look at budgets and make sure that everything that's in there is something that's absolutely critical for this next year. And if not, then we're removing some of those items from the budget request. And then as always, we have created some revenue estimates that we're taking a little harder look at now, and then calculating our baseline cost. So here are some numbers that we can share based upon some of the priorities that we have, and some are mandates and things that we know we have to do going into the next year. So our 4 priorities start with pay equity for all employee classes. And so that's a discussion that we have every year. We talk quite a bit about having a competitive package because we know that the compensation package has a direct impact on our ability to recruit and retain the most qualified individuals, specifically with our teaching staff. And so with that, we're still working on the cost that will be presented or recommended to the board for next year's budget for any adjustments that would happen to any of our employee classes. Full day pre-K, we know, is a House Bill 3 mandate. And so we have moved forward with that as a priority in the budget for the 2021 year. And so with the full day pre-K across the board with all the teachers and the staff associated, teachers and paraprofessional staff associated with that change, the cost would be just under 2.1 million. And we know with our 9th grade centers that are scheduled to open in August, we have some staff that is above and beyond staff that we have to have in order to move those, in most cases, between 700 to 800 students out of the main building and into the 9th grade center. And that cost is estimated to be about 1.6 million. And also our specialty middle schools at the Lift 6 campuses, converting those campuses into specialty middle schools. We have made some adjustments there as well. And we do know the Lift 6 campuses were a priority in the 2019-20 budget that we're in right now. Some of the adjustments we've made there is that we have implemented a modified block schedule at the 3 campuses that will have the specialty programs at Clotton Middle School, which will be the Polytechnic campus next year, Bamel Middle School that we talked about earlier, moving in the direction of having kindergarten through 8th grade at that campus. And they are also an international campus as well. And Bailey Middle School, who is the Performing and Visual Arts specialty campus. And so the cost of adding its 4 teachers at each campus at each of those 3 campuses is about $708,000. With, we're looking at adding an additional assistant principal at risk to the Lift 6 campuses, because what campuses had done historically is they had to find creative ways to get an assistant principal, but we knew the need was there. And so at this point, we're able to give that additional principal to each of those campuses. And of course, the cost to convert the Bamel K-8 program by adding the pre-K and kinder classes this year, that cost is about $400,000 as well. So those are some cost priorities that we already have slated in the budget as we've developed it thus far. Okay, so next steps, we've talked quite a bit about the property value estimates that we should have on or before April 30th. So we should be able to share that information with you at the budget session at the end of the month. We'll continue to monitor this ever-changing landscape of what's happening with the economy and what impact that will have on us going forward. And of course, we always do, but we're looking even harder at cost-saving opportunities that can help us with staving off any big change in budget revenues in the future. And then of course, we'll come back to you with a lot more detailed information and some recommendations at the dedicated budget work session on April 30th.
Ms. Westbrook, can you remind me, how much is our general fund balance right now?
It's about 125 million, I believe. And that was before we passed our about $20 million worth of one-time cost in August or in October. And so we should be close to about 106 million once those costs are.
Does that include the 5 million that we did for technology?
Thank you for that. So 101,
okay.
If you take that out. Now, of course, this year with the 1920 budget, where we've
basically stopped operations in a lot of areas. We should see some savings there too, which would add to the fund balance for 2019-20. And so one of the things that we have talked about with our campuses, because they went out for spring break, we haven't allowed them really to spend money at this point in time unless we're stopping and looking to make sure that it's reasonable and necessary for the remote learning situation that we're in right now. So we have talked about a way to provide some carryover funds, because we know that we'll have needs for our students when they get back in our brick and mortar buildings that we've never had before. And we want to make sure that we have some funds reserved to address those needs when our students do come back. Okay, if there are no further questions, then that is all for me, President Newhouse.
Thank you, Ms. Westbrooks. Are there any questions relating to anything on our agenda tonight? Hearing none, then there are no other items on tonight's agenda, so I will now entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
President Newhouse, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
And second,
Trustee Durant seconds that.
it's been moved by Kelly Hodges and seconded by Justine Durant that the Board of Trustees adjourn this meeting. I will now poll the board members for their vote to adjourn this meeting. Winfred Adams Jr.,
Aye.
Kelly Hodges,
Aye.
Deborah Jensen,
Aye.
Justine Durant,
Aye.
Jana Gonzalez,
Aye.
and Donald Davis.
Aye.
Rhonda Newhouse, aye. So the motion carries unanimously. There's no further business. This meeting is officially adjourned at 8:16 p.m.